Okay, let's dig into this. You might think a bar of soap is, well, pretty straightforward, right? Lather, rinse, done.
Yeah, seems simple on the surface.
But when you actually look closer, especially in a huge, diverse market like India, you find this really fascinating story. It's about regional tastes, culture, and just fierce brand competition.
It is pretty intriguing, isn't it? How something so, basic, so everyday can show so much about consumer behavior and marketing strategy. It's definitely more than just about getting clean.
Exactly. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the Indian soap market by looking at two really big players, Lifebuoy and Santoor.
Right. Two household names, but with very different stories.
Yeah, and we're drawing heavily from an article called Same Soap, Different Story, Regional Taste and Trust in Lifebuoy versus Santoor. It's by Sneha Mali from Cognitive Market Research.
A really insightful piece.
It is. And our goal here is to figure out how these two brands selling, fundamentally similar products managed to build such different regional strongholds across India.
It really seems to boil down to how they understand and then tap into local preferences, local values, and build trust in surprisingly different ways.
So where does that difference start? What's the core distinction?
Well, it seems to begin with their basic brand positioning. What is the soap for?
Okay.
For Lifebuoy, for decades now, it's been about health, hygiene, protection.
Right, the red bar, fighting germs, that's the image.
Exactly. Its whole identity is built around safety, cleanliness. And that message, that positioning, has made it incredibly strong, especially in North and Central India.
So the trust there is really built on that feeling of safety, of keeping the family healthy.
Precisely. And you add its long history, its association with things like public health campaigns, hand washing awareness drives.
Yeah.
It's become the default choice for hygiene protection in those areas.
Okay, that makes sense for Lifebuoy. But then there's Santoor, and the article says it takes a completely different approach.
Totally different. Santoor isn't really talking about germs first.
Mm.
It's leaning into beauty, self-care. It's got more of an emotional, aesthetic appeal.
So less about protection, more about pampering, sin nourishment.
Yes, exactly. Fragrance is key, how it makes your skin feel. And that focus has really carved out its stronghold, particularly in South and Western India.
Interesting. So in the South and West, the trust is built more on those personal care values, maybe traditional ingredients, that sort of thing.
That seems to be it. It connects with different priorities, aesthetics, sensibilities, maybe certain traditional beauty rituals.
So you've got this split,
Yeah.
health and hygiene driving things in one part of the country, beauty and self-care in another. How does that difference actually, show up in the soap itself
Yeah.
and the marketing?
Well, those regional preferences definitely shape the product formulations and the strategies. For Lifebuoy, the emphasis is clearly on the antibacterial, the germ protection qualities. The article mentions variants like Lifebuoy Total 10, the name itself tells you something. They highlight enhanced protection, maybe talk about scientific validation.
And the marketing follows suit, I assume.
Right. It often shows relatable family situations, parents protecting kids. That message of care, of safety, really resonates with the values often emphasized in North and Central Indian households.
Okay. And Santoor, how does their product reflect the beauty angle?
Well, there, it's much more about the sensory experience. Fragrance is huge. Skin-friendly ingredients are central.
And they use specific ingredients, right? Like natural ones.
Yes, the article highlights things like sandalwood and turmeric being incorporated into their formulations.
Okay. And those ingredients, they have a lot of cultural weight, don't they?
Mhm.
Especially in the South and West, linked to traditional beauty practices.
Exactly. So it's not just what's in the soap, it's the story, the heritage those ingredients bring. It connects on a deeper level.
So their marketing would highlight that. The smell, the feel, the traditional aspect.
Precisely. They focus on the sensory benefits, the cosmetic effects. The article notes they often use regional celebrities, traditional themes in their advertising, which obviously resonates very strongly with local audiences in the South and West who value that personal care aspect.
It really makes sense. Different priorities, different formulations, different messages, all tailored to what matters most in their core regions.
But, having the right product and message is one thing. Getting it to the customer is another.
Distribution.
Ah,
That's always crucial, isn't it? How does that play into reinforcing these regional strongholds?
Well, Lifebuoy has a massive advantage here, being part of Unilever.
Right, the huge multinational.
That gives them access to this incredibly vast established distribution network. They can reach deep into rural and semi-urban markets, especially across the north and central regions. You find Lifebuoy pretty much everywhere.
So not just supermarkets, but the small local shops too, the Kirana stores.
Absolutely, modern retail traditional Kiranas. And their presence goes beyond just shops. The article points out they're often visible in schools, in healthcare settings, involved in community programs.
Okay, so that visibility reinforces the hygiene message and builds trust in places associated with health and community. It's not just available, it's seen as part of the community's well-being fabric.
Exactly. Now, Santoor's approach seems quite different, much more targeted towards its strongholds in the south and west.
So less about blanketing the country, more about focusing where its message resonates most.
Seems like it. They prioritize getting into urban and semi-urban retail, places like beauty stores, maybe specialty shops where people are actively looking for personal care products.
And how do they manage that without the giant Unilever network?
They seem to rely more on regional supply chains, localized sales teams. Building strong relationships with retailers in those specific regions is key for them getting good shelf space, making sure the product experience is consistent.
So a more focused, perhaps relationship-driven approach in their core markets.
Right. It's about sustaining that connection and loyalty where they're already strong.
Okay, so they've built these really solid foundations in their respective regions. But what happens when they try to, you know, cross over? What are the big challenges when Lifebuoy tries to push south or Santoor tries to push north?
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky. Because what works so well in one region can actually be a hurdle in another.
How so for Lifebuoy?
Well, that strong health and hygiene message, which is gold in the north, might not hit the same way in the south, where consumers are maybe looking more for fragrance, for skin benefits, that sort of thing.
Right, so Lifebuoy has to figure out how to balance its core germ protection identity with maybe enhancing the sensory appeal. That sounds like walking a tightrope.
It does. And they're also competing against entrenched local preferences, as the article mentions. You can't just assume the same message will work everywhere. It probably needs really nuanced marketing, maybe even product tweaks for those markets.
Okay, and for Santoor trying to move north or central, what are the hurdles?
Kind of the mirror image, really. They face challenges in markets where maybe consumers are more price sensitive or where that basic germ protection is the absolute top priority.
So they need to convince people their soap is effective, maybe on a health level, without losing that core beauty and sensory identity.
Exactly. They need to build awareness around efficacy, perhaps, while staying true to what makes Santoor, well, Santoor, and expanding distribution into those really complex northern retail landscapes. That takes serious money, strategic partnerships.
So the article suggests both brands really need to keep evolving their products and strategies if they want to succeed outside their comfort zones. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Not at all. It requires constant adaptation to meet very different expectations.
Ultimately, then, this all comes back to building and keeping consumer trust and loyalty, right? But it sounds like they build it in fundamentally different ways.
Absolutely. Lifebuoy's loyalty, it seems, comes from decades of delivering on that hygiene promise. Its association with health campaigns reinforces it.
People trust it to keep their families safe. It's reliable.
Yes. And the article mentions its community outreach, too, which builds an emotional connection beyond just the product. It reinforces its role as a dependable choice, making it harder for competitors who focus purely on, say, price or fragrance.
It's trust built on safety, on consistency. And there's actually a really stark example of this in the article, isn't there? About 2020.
Ah, yes, the fast fact. That's a perfect illustration. It points out that in 2020, with the pandemic hitting,
Hygiene suddenly became everyone's top priority.
exactly, and Lifebuoy saw a significant jump in household penetration, especially in those northern states where its health message was already so deeply ingrained. People turned to the brand they already trusted for exactly that protection.
Wow. Talk about being in the right place with the right message at the right, albeit scary time. It perfectly validated their long-term strategy in those regions.
It really did. Now, Santoor's loyalty, on the other hand, is built on a different kind of connection. It's more sensory, more cultural.
Right, that feeling of personal care going beyond just basic cleaning.
Yes. The fragrance, the way it makes the skin feel, the connection to those traditional ingredients like sandalwood and turmeric. The article suggests this creates a really deep emotional bond.
So it becomes more than just soap. maybe a symbol of beauty or tradition in those regions.
It seems like it. And that drives repeat buys, strong word of mouth. For Santoor, trust is about delivering on that skincare promise, that sensory experience, and the authenticity of its ingredients.
So both incredibly successful, but through very different paths to building that crucial consumer relationship, tailored to specific regional values and expectations.
Precisely. And they succeed because they've nurtured these distinct forms of trust over time.
So when we boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here?
I think it's that even for something as, every day as a bar of soap, you absolutely cannot ignore regional differences. Tastes, cultural values, targeted strategies, they create completely different market dynamics.
Understanding those local nuances isn't just a nice to have for brands in a diverse market like India.
It's critical, absolutely essential for success. You just can't treat a diverse country as a single uniform market.
And that really raises a fascinating question for you listening right now.
Yeah. How many other products that seem simple on the surface might have these equally complex, regionally driven stories hidden underneath?
Think about it. The things you buy regularly, your go-to snack, maybe your laundry detergent, even a particular brand of tea or coffee.
What hidden cultural factors, what regional preferences might be shaping their success, their packaging, how they're advertised, right where you live, or in other parts of the world?
Yeah, take a look around next time you're shopping. Try to spot those patterns in your own experience.
You might be surprised at the stories hiding in plain sight. It's actually pretty fascinating once you start looking.